We call it history, but deep down it's our memory, the imprint left by the footsteps of 1,000 generations, and by the questions we never stopped asking. Who are we? Where did we come from? And where are we going? We're not the strongest, nor the fastest, but we were the only ones who dreamed of gods, who buried the dead, who painted caves with symbols that speak. It was thought that made us human, and doubt that pushed us into the unknown. From the first steps in Africa, to the fires beneath the night sky, to the words carved in stone and ink, our species built something greater than flesh and bone, a shared consciousness. In this documentary, we'll follow the long journey of humanity, from the earliest hominids to the global world we now live in. We'll dive into the ideas, the struggles, the gestures, and the myths that shaped who we are and still echo within us. Because the history of humanity is not just about kings, wars, or empires. It's about how we learn to live, to think, and to remember. Our story doesn't begin with kings or cities. It begins more than 7 million years ago, when a group of primates split from the common ancestor of chimpanzees. From that split, a unique lineage was born. Among them walked creatures like Australopithecus, small, agile, with a modest brain, but already upright on 2 legs, the first to gaze at the horizon as if searching for more than food. Over time, we entered what we now call the Lower Paleolithic, 2.5 million to 300,000 BCE, the earliest Stone Age. Around 2.5 million years ago came Homo habilis, craftsman of survival. With more skillful hands and a growing brain, he learned to shape stone, to build the first technology, the tool. Then came Homo erectus, the conqueror of fire. Nearly 2 million years ago, he left Africa and spread across Asia and Europe. He could hunt, cook, cooperate. He knew how to wait for the light. In the Middle Paleolithic, between 300,000 and 45,000 years ago, the Neanderthals dominated. They buried their dead, used pigments, hunted in groups. They had strength and perhaps even poetry. But it was Homo sapiens, born around the same time, who would take thought further. Lighter, more agile, but also more restless, able to imagine tomorrow, to fear death, and to invent stories to make sense of life. Over millennia, they spread like fire through dry grass, from the savannas to the forests, from the icy caves of Europe to the deserts of Australia. Wherever they went, others vanished. The Neanderthals, the Denisovans, left behind. It was the end of a long evolutionary journey, the closing of humanity's oldest chapter, the Stone Age. Why us? Maybe because we knew how to combine the strength of the tribe with the power of the idea. Because we didn't win with claws, nor with fangs, but with imagination. Thought was sparked, and with it came the hands. Hands that shaped, that hunted, that created. Long before cities, we were already turning stone into blades, bone into needles, wood into spears. Tools became extensions of the body, and the body became a maker. More than 1 million years ago, these tools already allowed us to hunt, build, and adapt. And every strike of stone chipped away at ignorance too. But survival wasn't enough. We needed to communicate. And so slowly language was born, first with sounds, then with meaning. The brain grew. So did vocabulary. And the tribe became more than just bodies. It became a network of ideas. That language taught us how to tell stories and to pass down knowledge from one generation to the next. Around 100,000 years ago, we see the first signs of symbolic thought, shell beads, red ochre, rituals, and later on the walls of caves, the first animals appear, painted with blood and charcoal, hands imprinted in the stone of memory. We call this time the Paleolithic, the age of carved stone. It was then we learned to hunt in groups, to share stories around the fire, to live not only in body, but in myth. We no longer lived only in the present. We had a past. We had fear and hope. That's when culture was born. Not as a luxury, but as a weapon to survive, to unite, to remember. Because those who know how to tell stories also know how to resist forgetting. Everything changed when we stopped chasing food and started growing it. Around 10,000 years ago, in the Fertile Crescent, began the quietest revolution in history, the domestication of wheat, barley, goats, and sheep. From nomadic hunters, we became farmers and herders. And with that, we stopped moving. Humans discovered they could stay. Where there were once tents, now rose huts, then houses, then whole villages. We call this time the Neolithic, the age of polished stone, c. 10,000 to 3000 BCE. It was then that the first permanent settlements were born, Catalonia and Jericho among them, where clay became bricks and the earth gave bread. But it wasn't just the soil that blossomed. With stability came surplus, and with surplus came conflict, hierarchy, trade, and temples. For the first time, there was time to think, to plan, to dream of gods and power. And so the first civilizations emerged. Along the Nile, the Euphrates, the Indus, and the Yellow River, with writing, laws, religions, walls, and markets. Humanity was leaving prehistory behind and taking its first steps into the world of cities. Civilization isn't built only with walls, but with words, with shared ideas, with memories that time cannot erase. After stone came metal. With the discovery of smelting, the Bronze Age began, c. 3300–200 BCE. And with it came palaces, armies, and trade networks. But in a more complex world, there was a need to remember, to record. And so writing was born, first as accounting to track grain, taxes, and agreements, then as a timeless language to preserve laws, stories, and visions of the world. From Mesopotamian cuneiform to Egyptian hieroglyphs, from the brushstrokes of China to the signs carved in the Indus Valley, and knowledge took shape in signs and symbols. With it came scribes, temples, and archives. And in the heart of cities, the sages emerged. Later in the Iron Age, c. 1200 to 500 BCE, empires were forged, with walls, coins, and maps. And people began to ask, not just how to live, but why. In Greece, reason was born. In India, meditation. In China, harmony. In Egypt, eternity. Ideas began to travel, with merchants, soldiers, and sailors. They traded metals, but also myths. They wove cloth and philosophy. And for the first time, the world began to think in networks. Knowledge was no longer just an inheritance. It became a choice, a craft, and a destiny. As people grew in number, so did the mystery. Where did we come from? What lies beyond death? Faith became a refuge, and the gods began to dwell in temples, in texts, and in human minds. In Egypt, pharaohs were children of the sky. In India, life turned in cycles. In China, harmony was the goal. In Persia, they spoke of light and darkness. And in the Levant, a new idea emerged. A single God, invisible and absolute. Born from the roots of Hebrew monotheism, new visions of the divine would take shape, giving rise to two great faiths that would mark the soul of the world. Christianity, built around the figure of Christ and the divine word, and Islam, revealed to the Prophet Muhammad and grounded in conscious submission to Allah's will. Both shaped civilizations, inspired empires, and left deep marks on the history of the world. And from the east to the west, new empires were born, not only around temples or grain, but around laws, ideas, and identity. In Greece, democracy lit its fragile flame. In Rome, the law became an empire. Latin flowed through the provinces. Roads crossed continents, and the word citizen began to carry weight. They sculpted gods in marble, but also asked what it means to live well. Philosophy, reason, and civic life laid the foundations of the world we still inherit today. Time doesn't stop, and history never truly ends. What began with a stone in hand and a fire in the heart has reached the digital age, an era of machines, algorithms, and artificial intelligence. We are the same species, but facing new challenges, new questions, and the same old fears. Between wars and discoveries, between ruins and reinventions, humanity has walked a path woven from light and shadow. We built temples, but we also forged weapons. We drew maps, but we erased borders with blood. We elevated ideas, but often forgot compassion. And now, standing at the edge of an uncertain future, we return to the first question. What makes us human? Not empires, not wealth, but the search, the memory, the ability to change. Because the history of humanity is not only what has passed, it's what we choose to remember. And above all, what we decide to do next. The final page has not been written. And perhaps that page was never meant to be written.